I returned home after a grueling 26-hour nursing shift. 26 hours of saving lives, holding shaky hands, cleaning wounds that weren't mine. My feet were burning inside those once white shoes. My back was a knot of pain. My hands smelled like sanitizer, and I felt that bone-deep weariness that hits differently when you're no longer young. I am 67 years old. As a nurse for over 4 decades, I thought the hardest parts of my life were behind me. I was wrong. When I opened the door to my kitchen, the one I'd cleaned 1,000 times, where I'd cooked for every one of my son's birthdays, where I'd cried over my husband's death, I saw something that shouldn't have been there. A shiny new silver refrigerator sitting right next to mine. I stood in the doorway, my shoulder bag hanging heavily, trying to understand. Had they bought a refrigerator without telling me why? Ours worked perfectly fine. That's when I heard her voice. "That one is mine, Susan." Catherine, my daughter-in-law. She emerged from the hallway with that look I knew too well, that mix of disdain and boredom, as if I were an annoying fly in her space. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice raspy from not speaking to anyone outside the hospital for hours. "The refrigerator is mine," she repeated, crossing her arms and leaning against the doorframe. "From now on, buy your own food, Susan." She didn't call me mother-in-law. She didn't call me mom. She called me by my first name, as if we were roommates, as if this wasn't my house. I opened the old refrigerator, my refrigerator, and the air went out of my chest. Everything, absolutely everything I had bought 3 days earlier had yellow sticky labels with her name written on them in black marker. Catherine on the cheese. Catherine on the tomatoes. Catherine on the yogurt, the beans, the chicken, even the butter. "What is this?" I whispered. "What I told you. This is my food. You buy yours." She shrugged. "It's not fair that I have to share what I buy with my money." Her money. Catherine didn't work. She hadn't worked a single day since she married my son Ethan 2 years ago. Ethan was the one who was supposed to bring in the money, although lately that money seemed to come out of my own savings every time I lent them some for gas, for groceries, for emergencies. "Ethan?" I tried to call for my son, but he was already there in the doorway of his bedroom, looking at me with eyes I no longer recognized. The same eyes that looked at me with love when he was a child. Now there was just discomfort. "Mom, don't make a scene," he said with a sigh. "Catherine is right. Everyone should buy their own food. It's more organized this way." I felt the floor shift beneath me. "But I bought this. I paid for this week's groceries." "And that's why it has my name on it," said Catherine, pointing to the labels. "Now we all know what belongs to whom. Easier." I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip off every single one of those yellow labels and throw them in her face. But I was so tired. So terribly tired. I just nodded. I went to my bedroom. I closed the door, and for the first time in years, I sat on the edge of my bed and let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened. They were living in my house, the house I'd bought alone with my nurse's salary after my husband died and left me with nothing but debt and an 8-year-old son with chronic asthma. I worked double shifts, triple shifts. I mopped hospital floors at 3:00 a.m. to pay the mortgage. I skipped meals so Ethan could have his medicine. And now they were charging me for eating in my own kitchen. I took off my shoes. My feet were swollen, red. I had a new blister on my left heel. I didn't even remember when I got it. I heard laughter in the living room. Catherine and Ethan were watching television. I heard the sound of the microwave, smelled the popcorn. Popcorn that I couldn't eat because it had her name on it. I closed my eyes. And in that silence, in the darkness of my own room, something inside me began to change. I didn't know it yet, but that night, exhausted and humiliated, was the last night I would let them treat me like a stranger in my own home. Because sometimes, silence is not surrender. Sometimes it's just the calm before the storm. I thought the labels were rock bottom, that they couldn't sink me any lower. How naive I was. 3 days later, I returned from another shift at the hospital. This time only 12 hours, but they had been 12 hours of hell. a child with severe burns, an elderly man who died while I held his hand because he had no family. I came home wanting only a hot cup of tea and silence. I went into the bathroom, and there they were. More yellow labels on the shampoo, the soap, the toothpaste, even the toilet paper. Catherine! I stood paralyzed, looking at my own toothbrush, the only object without a label, as if it were the last thing I had left in the world. I left the bathroom. I went to the kitchen. The pots had labels, the pans, the glasses, the plates. I opened the cutlery drawer, even the forks. The damned forks. Looking for something? Catherine's voice sounded right behind me. I jumped. I hadn't heard her approach. Catherine, this is too much, I said, gesturing at the labeled items. Too much. She shook her head with that smile that never reached her eyes. Susan, I'm just protecting my things. You know how it is. Sometimes things get lost. They get mixed up. This way everyone knows what belongs to whom. But I bought these pots, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to keep calm. I bought these plates 20 years ago. Oh, she shrugged. Then put your name on them too. I put mine on what's mine. And what exactly did you buy? The words came out harder than I intended. Her eyes narrowed. Watch your tone, mother-in-law. I'm your son's wife. I deserve respect. Respect? That word echoed in my head as she turned and walked back to the living room where the television was still blaring. That night, Catherine cooked. The smell filled the whole house. Turkey chili. My favorite turkey chili. The one I had taught her to make when they first got married, in those first few months when we still pretended to be a happy family. I stayed in my bedroom. My stomach was growling. I hadn't eaten dinner. I'd only had coffee at the hospital. I thought about going out, about serving myself some chili. She had used my recipe, after all. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not after the labels. Not after understanding that every bite I took from that kitchen would be a defeat. I heard their laughter. Ethan and her. They were talking about a new streaming series, about going on vacation to Florida. If we sell your mother's car, we could save up for a better hotel, said Catherine, her voice carrying clearly through the thin walls. Silence. I don't know if she'll want to sell it, Ethan replied in a weak voice. Oh, honey, that car is old. She hardly uses it. We need it more. I didn't hear what my son answered. I only heard that he didn't defend me. The next morning I went downstairs early. I had the day off. I needed to talk to Ethan alone without her. I found him in the kitchen drinking coffee. My coffee from my coffee maker, which now had a yellow label. Son, we need to talk, I said, sitting across from him. He looked up. I saw the dark circles under his eyes. He looked tired, older than his 32 years. Mom, if this is about the labels, it's not just about the labels, Ethan. I cut him off. It's about everything. I took a deep breath. It's about how you both speak to me, how you treat me. This is my house. I know. Do you? Really? Because it doesn't look like it. My hands were trembling slightly. You don't pay rent. You don't pay utilities. You don't pay property taxes. Nothing. And now it turns out I can't even use my own soap. He rubbed his face. Mom, Catherine is my wife. I have to support her. If you don't like how she handles things, maybe you should think about finding your own place. The world stopped. My own place? I don't mean it in a bad way, he continued, not meeting my eyes. But we are a young couple. We need our space, privacy. We can't always be worried about whether you mind how we organize the house. My house, Ethan. My house. I already know it's legally your house, Mom. His tone became irritated. You don't have to repeat it, but it's also where I live, where my wife lives. And frankly, sometimes I feel Catherine is right. You're very old-fashioned. You don't understand how modern families work. I got up. I didn't say anything else. What could I say? I went up to my room. I took a box out of the closet, a box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were photos. Ethan as a baby. Ethan with his nebulizer, those enormous eyes looking at me with fear every time he couldn't breathe. Ethan at his high school graduation, at his first communion, at the hospital after the surgery that saved his life when he was 11, the operation that cost $45,000, which I paid for by selling my car, taking out loans, working at 2 hospitals at once. I ran my fingers over the photos, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel love. I felt something colder, more dangerous. I felt clarity, because my son had just told me to look for another place to live in the house that I bought with the money I earned taking care of the sick while he slept soundly, knowing that his mother would never let him fall. I put the photos away. That night, Catherine cooked again. This time, chicken enchiladas. The smell was a dagger in my empty stomach. I didn't leave my room. I stayed there in the dark, listening to their laughter. And I started planning. Because if 39 years of being a nurse had taught me anything, it was this. Pain is not healed by ignoring it. It's healed by cutting out what is rotten. And in that house, something had rotted. On Saturday, I decided to clean. Not because the house needed it, but because I needed to do something with my hands, something that would make me feel like I still had control over some corner of my own life. Catherine and Ethan had gone out to look at some things for the apartment, they said. I didn't ask what apartment. I wasn't asking anything anymore. I started in the living room, then the bathroom. Then I stopped in front of the door to Ethan's room, his room, the one that had been his since he was 8 years old, the one I painted blue because it was his favorite color, the one we filled with football posters and then rock bands. I went in. The bed was unmade, clothes scattered on the floor. It smelled like that sweet perfume Catherine wore. None of my son's scent, the boy who smelled like soap and dirt after playing outside. I started picking up. I folded the clothes. I made the bed. I wiped the furniture. And then I saw it. The nightstand drawer, ajar. I wasn't going to open it. I really wasn't. But something shiny caught my eye inside. The afternoon sun hit it directly, and that gleam caught my attention. I opened the drawer. Papers. Lots of messy papers, old receipts, printed photos of Catherine at beaches and expensive restaurants and bars. All recent, all while I was lending them money for gas. I kept looking without knowing exactly what I was looking for, and then I saw it. A thick manila envelope with my name written on top in Ethan's handwriting. Mom, important documents. I took it out with trembling hands. Inside were the house deeds, the ones I kept in my room, in my filing cabinet. How had they gotten there? Beneath the deeds was another document, a notarized promissory note dated 2 years ago. Loan, $75,000. Debtor, Ethan Williams. Creditor, Susan Williams. Concept, initial investment for auto parts import business. I remembered everything. 2 years ago, Ethan arrived excited. He had a plan. A friend had proposed a business to him importing auto parts from the United States. He was going to be a millionaire. He just needed $75,000 to start. I had that money. I had saved it for 10 years. It was for my retirement, for when I couldn't work anymore. But he was my son, my only son. I'll pay you back in 6 months, Mom, with interest. You'll see. We signed before a notary because he insisted. So you can see I'm serious. The business never worked. The friend disappeared with part of the money. Ethan never mentioned the loan again. And I never asked him because he was my son. And a mother does not collect what she gives with love. Or does she? I kept checking the envelope. There were more papers, bank statements from 6 months ago, an account I didn't know about in Ethan's name with regular deposits of $2,500, $3,500. Where was that money coming from if he supposedly wasn't working? And at the bottom of everything, a folded sheet. I unfolded it. It was a printout of text messages between Ethan and Catherine. Catherine, I already talked to the realtor. He says this house in this area is worth about $500,000. Ethan, that's a lot. Catherine, that's why, honey. Your mom is old. She's not going to live forever. And when she dies, Who is she going to leave the house to? Ethan. Me, I'm her only son. Catherine. Exactly. But why wait? Convince her to sell it. We tell her it's so she can go to a smaller, easier to care for place. She keeps $150,000. We keep $350,000. And with that, we start our real life far away from here. Ethan. I don't know. She's going to be mad. Catherine. She'll get over it. Besides, what is she going to do? Kick us out? You're her son. She's not going to leave you on the street. We give her a few months of special treatment. Soften her up, and that's it. Ethan. Special treatment. Haha. Catherine. You'll see. In 2 months, she'll be begging us to help her sell. The date of the message, 3 months ago. The labels appeared 2 weeks after that conversation. I dropped the papers. I sat on my son's bed and began to shake. Not from fear, but from rage. Pure, boiling rage that rose from my stomach to my throat. They were pushing me out of my own house with a plan. Step by step, humiliation by humiliation. And my son knew it. He had planned it. I took photos of everything with my phone. The messages, the promissory note, the bank statements, the deeds that had no business being in that drawer. I put everything back exactly as I found it. I closed the drawer. I left the room and went downstairs to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped it. I looked around. The 2 refrigerators, the yellow labels on everything. The house I bought with my pain, with my night shifts, with my knees destroyed from standing 12 hours a day. The house where I raised my son alone after his father died. The son who now wanted to sell it to leave with his wife far away from me. I wiped away the tears I hadn't realized were falling. And in that moment, something inside me definitively broke. But not in the way they expected. I didn't break down. I broke forward. Because it is one thing to forgive, it is another thing to be stupid. And I had been stupid enough already. I took out my phone. I searched on Google. Eviction attorney New York City. Several appeared. I chose one. Mr. David Miller. Good reviews. Office near Midtown. I dialed. A secretary answered. Miller Law Firm, good afternoon. Good afternoon. My voice sounded firm, surprisingly firm. I need an urgent appointment. I want to evict someone from my property. Is it a tenant? No, it's my son. There was a brief silence. I understand. When can you come in? Tomorrow, if possible. Let me see. Yes, we have a slot at 11 a.m. I'll be there. I hung up. I heard the front door. They had returned. We're home, Catherine yelled with that chirpy voice she used when she was in a good mood. Susan, is there any dinner? I took a deep breath. I walked out of the kitchen with a smile. Not yet. Do you want me to make something? Catherine looked at me, surprised. Ethan, too. Yeah. Anything is fine, my son said. Perfect, I nodded. I'll make some eggs. They'll be ready in a moment. They looked at me strangely. Of course they did. I had barely spoken to them for days, barely left my room. But now I was smiling, because now I knew something they didn't know. Wars are not won by those who shout the loudest. They are won by those who strike when the enemy lets down their guard. Catherine's parents, Mr. George and Mrs. Nancy Reeves, arrived unexpectedly the following week. I came home from work to find them sitting in my living room as if they owned the place. Ah, the mother-in-law has arrived, said Mrs. Nancy with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Good evening, I murmured, setting down my nursing bag. Susan, come sit down, said Catherine, pointing to a chair. A chair in my own living room while they occupied the sofas. I sat down. What else could I do? Look, mother-in-law, began Mr. George, a heavy man with a mustache and a booming voice. We gathered here because we need to talk about something important as a family. As a family. Catherine told us about the situation, he continued. And we understand it's difficult for you, but you have to be reasonable. Reasonable about what? I asked. About space, Mrs. Nancy intervened. This house is big, yes, but 3 adults living together? It's complicated. The kids need privacy. They're at an age to start their own family. And you? Well, you're in another stage of life. I felt my blood boil. Another stage? Don't take it the wrong way, said Mr. George. We're just saying that maybe it would be better for everyone if you considered options. What options? Catherine leaned forward. There are very nice communities for seniors, Susan. Places where you would be with people your age, with nurses, activities. You wouldn't be alone. A retirement home, I said without emotion in my voice. It's not a retirement home, Ethan quickly added. They're like communities, and you don't have to go far. There's one here in New Jersey near the highway. We went to see it. It's nice. You went to see it? I repeated. Without me? Uncomfortable silence. We wanted to surprise you, said Catherine. Look, we even took pictures. She showed me her phone. Photos of a gray building with gardens, small rooms, elderly people in wheelchairs. I saw myself there, in that place, waiting to die. In this house? I asked with a trembling voice. Well, Ethan scratched the back of his neck. Catherine and I would stay here eventually. Maybe we'll sell it, get something smaller, but that would be later. Right, I said, later. The important thing is that you would be well cared for, Mrs. Nancy insisted. And the kids could start their real life. And who would pay for the community? I asked. More silence. Well, you have your pension from the hospital, said Catherine. And if you sell your car, that will cover the first few months. Then we'll see. My car, the one I bought 5 years ago. The only luxury I had allowed myself in decades. And if I sell the car, how would I get to work? I asked. I still work, in case you don't remember. Oh, Susan, sighed Mrs. Nancy. At your age, you should already be thinking about retiring, enjoying life. I am 67 years old, not 80, I retorted. But you work too much, Catherine said in a honeyed voice. You get tired, you get sick. Wouldn't it be better to rest? I looked at my son. He didn't look at me. He looked at the floor. Is that what you want, Ethan? I asked. For me to leave? He looked up. I saw something in his eyes. Guilt? Shame? Mom, we just want what's best for you. What's best for me? I stood up. Or what's best for you? Don't start with your scenes, Catherine said, rolling her eyes. It's not a scene, Catherine. It's a question. What do you gain if I leave? You gain, she exploded. You gain peace of mind. You gain care. You gain not having to clean this huge house. This house that I bought? Oh, come on. Always the same thing. My house. My house. Catherine also stood up. Yes, it's your house, but it's also where your son lives. Or what? Are you going to kick him out? Catherine, calm down, said both Mr. George and Mrs. Nancy. I won't calm down. I'm sick of this situation. She turned to me. Since I arrived in this house, I have tried to get along with you. But you only know how to play the victim. Everything has to be your way. Well, no, Susan. You're not the only one living here anymore. And if you can't accept it, then yes, maybe you should look for another place. The silence that followed was thick. I looked at Ethan. Do you think the same? He rubbed his face. Mom, I think Catherine is right. You can't keep controlling everything. This house? Yes, you bought it, but it's also my home. And if I want to live here with my wife, it's my decision. Your decision? I felt something break in my chest. And what am I? A bother? Nobody said that, Mrs. Nancy intervened. You don't have to say it, I murmured. I turned around and went up the stairs. Behind me, I heard Catherine. Oh, she got mad. She'll get over it tomorrow. And soft laughter, as if none of this mattered. I went into my room. I locked the door. And this time, I did cry. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I cried for the son I raised, for the sleepless nights when he had a fever, for the 3 jobs I worked to pay for his school, for every dollar I saved thinking about his future. I cried until there were no more tears left. And when I finished, I washed my face. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were red, swollen, deep, dark circles. But I also had something new in my gaze. Determination. I took out my phone. I looked up the number for Mr. Miller. I sent him a text message. "Mr. Miller, go ahead with everything. I want them out of my house as soon as possible." The answer came in seconds. "Understood, Mrs. Williams. We will file the lawsuit tomorrow." I put the phone away. I lay down. And before falling asleep, I whispered in the darkness, "Forgive me, Ethan, but I can't save you from yourself anymore." My meeting with Mr. Miller went exactly as I had expected. His office smelled of coffee and old paper. He had a huge bookcase full of legal codes on the wall. His law degree hung next to a photo with the mayor of New York. He looked serious, but his eyes were kind. "Tell me everything, Mrs. Williams. Take your time." And I did. I told him about the labels, the messages, the loan they never paid back, the house being in my name, everything. He took notes. Occasionally he nodded. When I finished, he took off his glasses and looked at me intently. "Do you have evidence for all of this?" "I have photos of the messages. I have the notarized promissory note for the loan. I have the house deeds. Everything is in my name." "Do they pay rent?" "No, nothing." "Utilities?" "No, I pay for everything. Electricity, water, gas, property taxes, internet, everything." He nodded slowly. "Ma'am, legally you have every right to evict them. It's your property. They don't have a lease agreement. They don't pay anything. They are what we call occupants without title." He paused. "But he is your son. Are you sure about this?" I was silent for a moment. Was I sure? I thought about the yellow labels, about the messages planning to sell my house, about Ethan telling me to look for another place. "Yes," I replied. "I'm sure." "Good. I need you to sign a power of attorney. We are going to start the legal process. It will take a few weeks, but we can speed things up if they don't cooperate." He opened a folder. "We can also claim the loan with interest. We would be talking about, let me calculate, about $92,000. The figure made me dizzy. "That much?" "The interest accumulates, ma'am. And your son signed a legal promissory note. That is money you can claim." I signed the papers. I paid his retainer fee, $2,500, money I had saved for emergencies. This was an emergency. I left the office with a strange feeling in my chest, like I had just jumped out of a plane without being sure if the parachute was going to open, but there was no turning back. The following days were strange. I acted normal, too normal. I said good morning in the mornings. I made my breakfast without complaining about the labels. I left for work. I returned. I locked myself in my room. Catherine was confused. I saw her looking at me several times with a frown, as if trying to figure out what had changed. Ethan simply avoided me. He left early. He returned late. When we crossed paths, he averted his gaze. Good. Let them think I had given up. Let them think I had accepted my fate as an annoying old woman who would soon go quietly to a retirement community. But at night, when they were asleep, I worked. I observed. I listened. I investigated. I discovered their routines. Catherine got up at noon. She showered in my main bathroom. She went out, sometimes to the hair salon, sometimes to have coffee with friends. She returned with bags of clothes. Nordstrom, Macy's, brands I could never afford. Ethan left early, supposedly to look for work, but he came back smelling of beer and cigarettes, with red eyes. One Tuesday night, while they were watching a movie in the living room, I slipped back into their room. This time I knew exactly what I was looking for. I opened the nightstand drawer. I checked under the clothes. Nothing. I looked under the bed. Shoe boxes. I opened them one by one. In the third one, I found what I needed. Bank statements updated until last month. Regular deposits of $3,000 every 15 days. Where was that coming from? I kept looking. There were receipts from bars, from expensive restaurants, one from a hotel in Midtown. A hotel? Why did they need a hotel if they lived here? And then I saw a sealed envelope. I opened it. Inside was a flyer from a real estate agency. Pre-sale apartments, Upper East Side area, starting at $465,000. One of the apartments was marked with a red marker. A 3-bedroom, $535,000. On the last page in Catherine's handwriting, with the sale of the old lady's house, $500,000 approx, equals $120,000 for her. We keep $380,000, plus bank loan, $165,000, equals $545,000. Perfect. $120,000 for me, from my $500,000 house. The math of my own betrayal, written in red marker. I took photos of everything. The bank statements, the flyer, the hotel receipts. I put everything back exactly where it was. I left the room. They were still in the living room. I heard Catherine laughing at something in the movie. I went up to my room. I downloaded the photos to my laptop. I backed them up to the cloud. And then I did something I never thought I would do. I wrote to Patricia. Patricia was my colleague at the hospital. We had been working together for 15 years. She knew Ethan since he was a child. She had watched him grow up. "Patty, I need a favor. Do you know anyone who can investigate where some bank deposits are coming from?" She replied in minutes. "My cousin is an accountant. He works for the IRS. What do you need?" "I need to know if my son is declaring that income and where it comes from." "Send me the details. I'll tell you tomorrow." I sent her photos of the bank statements. The next morning, Patricia called me during my break at the hospital. "Susan, your son is in trouble. What did they find?" "Those deposits come from a shell company, one that is dedicated to false invoicing. It's tax fraud. If the IRS finds out, he's going to get a huge fine, maybe even jail time." My blood ran cold. "Jail time?" "This is serious, Susan. Your son is receiving black money. Someone is using him to launder money or to evade taxes, and he is the one who will pay if this explodes." "How do you know he knows?" "Because he signs the receipts. He has an account where the money arrives. He can't say he didn't know." I hung up, trembling. My son was involved in something illegal. That night I came home determined to talk to him alone. But when I walked in, I heard raised voices in the kitchen. "I told you you had to be more discreet." Ethan's voice sounded desperate. "Don't talk to me like that," Catherine replied. "It's not my fault your mom is so nosy." "What happened?" "Nothing. Just that I saw her looking at my phone the other day, I'm sure. When I went to the bathroom, my phone was in a different position." "You're paranoid." "I'm not paranoid. That old lady knows something. I can feel it." Silence. "What could she know?" Ethan asked, but his voice sounded nervous. "I don't know, but we have to speed things up. Talk to her. Convince her to sell the house now or to transfer it to your name. Something. The longer it takes, the more risk there is." "I can't pressure her anymore. She's already mad." "Well, find a way." Catherine's voice turned cold. "Because if this falls through, Ethan, I'm leaving. I didn't come to live with your mom forever. I came because you promised me a life, an apartment, travel. And so far, all I have are labels in a kitchen that isn't even mine. I love you, Katie. You know that. Love doesn't pay the bills, money does." I backed away from the door before they discovered me. I went up to my room with a pounding heart. I had all the pieces now, the illegal money, the plans to sell the house, the pressure for me to leave. Everything was connected. I took out my laptop. I opened a new document and I started writing a timeline with dates, with evidence, with photos, every humiliation, every lie, every yellow label. I spent the entire night doing that, organizing my defense as if it were a case at the hospital, systematizing the pain. At dawn, I printed everything. 3 copies. One for the lawyer, one for me, one for, well, I'd see what for. I showered. I got dressed. I made coffee. When I went down to the kitchen, Ethan was already there. He looked terrible. Sunken eyes, unshaven. "Good morning," I said calmly. He looked at me surprised. "Good morning, Mom." I made my breakfast. Toast, black coffee, fruit. He kept looking at me. "Are you okay?" he finally asked. I looked him in the eyes. "Very well, son. Why?" "I don't know. You look different." I smiled. "I slept well, that's all." Lie. I hadn't slept at all. but he didn't have to know that. I finished my breakfast. I washed my plate. I grabbed my things. I'm leaving for the hospital. Mom, he stopped me before I left. About the other day, about the community. You don't have to decide now. I know, I replied. Don't worry, and I left. In the car, before starting the engine, I called Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, this is Susan. I have more information. I think my son is involved in something illegal. I have evidence. Come to the office today if you can. I'm on my way. I hung up. I started the car, and as I drove through the streets of New York with the morning sun hitting my face, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power. Because I was no longer the foolish old woman who put up with everything for love. Now I was the lioness protecting what was hers, and no one was going to drive this lioness out of her den. I returned from work on Thursday evening, exhausted from a double shift. The hospital had been understaffed, as usual, and my back was screaming in protest. All I wanted was a hot shower and something to eat. Maybe I'd heat up some of the soup I'd stashed in the back of my refrigerator, hidden behind Ethan's old sports drinks that Catherine never touched. But when I opened my refrigerator, it was empty. Completely empty. I blinked, thinking my tired eyes were playing tricks on me. But no. The shelves that had held my carefully labeled food, I'd started putting Susan on my own items after the labeling began, were bare. Even the condiments were gone. As I stood there, staring at the vacant space, I noticed a black garbage bag beside the trash can. I walked over and looked inside. There was my food, all of it. The soup I'd made 2 days ago, the apples I'd bought, my yogurt, my cheese, everything thrown away like garbage. Oh, you're home. Catherine walked into the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She was wearing a new blouse. I could tell by the price tag still hanging from the collar. It looked expensive, the kind of thing I'd only buy on clearance after saving for months. I had to throw your food away, she said casually, as if commenting on the weather. You did what? My voice came out as a whisper. It was spoiled, she said with a shrug. It smelled awful. It was contaminating my refrigerator. You know how it is when things mix, everything ends up smelling bad. That food was fine. I bought it 2 days ago. I could feel a tremor starting in my hands. Well, I smelled it, and it was rotten. She looked at me with those cold eyes. Besides, Susan, I already told you. If you want to store food, buy your own refrigerator like I did. I looked at the garbage bag. There it was. My week's worth of food. $40 thrown in the trash. Something inside me broke. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was silent, like when a rope that has been stretched too long finally snaps. It just gave way. Where is Ethan? I asked in a hollow voice. In the living room. Why? I didn't answer. I walked to the living room. My son was lying on the couch, looking at his phone, a beer in hand. 2 empty bottles sat on the coffee table. Ethan? He looked up. What is it, Mom? Your wife threw my food in the trash. Oh, yeah. She told me it was spoiled. It was not spoiled. Mom. He sighed as if I were a spoiled child. If Catherine says it was bad, it was bad. She knows about these things. She knows. I felt my voice cracking. I've been buying groceries for 40 years. I think I know when something is rotten. Enough. Don't start. He stood up, swaying a little. He was drunk. I'm tired of your scenes. My scenes? The words came out like knives. My scenes? Ethan, you threw away food worth $40. $40 that I earned working while you were sitting here drinking beer that I paid for. You didn't pay for this beer. Catherine bought it. With what money, Ethan? With what money does Catherine buy things if she doesn't work? That's not your problem. Of course it's my problem. You live in my house. You eat my food. You use my utilities. Enough, he yelled. For the first time in years, my son yelled at me. I'm sick of it. Sick of everything having to be about you, your house, your food, your money. We get it. You did everything. You're the great martyr, the saintly mother who sacrificed everything. The words hit me like fists. Ethan, no. I'm tired, Mom. I'm tired of feeling guilty for existing, of feeling like I owe you every breath because you worked so hard. I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask for Dad to die. Those were your decisions, not mine." The silence that followed was unbearable. Catherine appeared in the doorway. She had a small, victorious smile. I looked at my son, at that 32-year-old man with eyes red from alcohol and rage, and I didn't recognize him. The boy who hugged my legs when he had nightmares. The teenager who brought me flowers on Mother's Day with his first paycheck. The young man who cried on my shoulder when his first girlfriend left him. That boy was gone. In his place was a stranger who hated me. "Is that right?" I said in a voice so low I barely heard myself. "That's right." I turned around. I went up the stairs. I went into my room. I locked the door. And then, for the first time in my life, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Not physically, my lungs were working, but something deeper. Something in the center of my chest had closed off. I sat on the bed. I took out my phone. With trembling hands, I dialed my sister Mary's number. She lived in Chicago. We didn't see each other much, but we had always been there for each other. "Susan, what happened?" she answered, worried. It was 10 o'clock at night. And then I collapsed. I told her everything between sobs, between hiccups, the labels, the messages, the loan, the food in the trash, Ethan's words. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I finished, there was silence. "Susan," she finally said in a serious voice, "you have to get him out of your house. He's my son. He is an ingrate, and that woman is a viper. They are going to leave you with nothing. And when they do, they are going to leave. And you are going to be left alone, without a house, without money, without anything." "But there are no buts, sister. I know you love him, but love cannot be so blind. Sometimes loving is letting them fall. It's the only thing that wakes them up." I cried harder. I can't do that to him." "Then prepare to lose everything, because that is what is going to happen." She hung up. I stayed there alone in the dark with the phone in my hand. And for the first time, I thought something terrible. I thought, what if I leave? What if I leave them the house and I leave? It would be easier, less painful. I could rent a small room, work until I retired, die peacefully knowing that I didn't break my family. But then I remembered something. I remembered the day I bought this house. Ethan was 12 years old. We had been renting a horrible apartment in a dangerous neighborhood for 2 years, but I had saved dollar by dollar for 5 years. The day I signed the deeds, I came home crying with happiness. "My son," I told him, "we have a house. A real house. No one can take it from us." He hugged me. He smelled like boys' soap and dreams. "No one, Mom. Not even if we don't pay rent. No one, because it's ours, yours and mine." I opened my eyes. Yours and mine. Not Catherine's. Not her parents'. Not anyone else's. Mine. I got up. I dried my tears. I opened my nightstand drawer. I took out the folder where I had all the evidence, the photos, the documents, and I took out something else. The original house deeds, the ones I had recovered from Ethan's room and kept in my room. I opened them. My name was there. Susan Williams, widow of Williams, sole proprietor. I ran my fingers over the letters. 40 years of work, 40 years of pain, 40 years of sacrifice. It was all in this paper, and no one was going to take it from me. I took out my phone. I looked up the chat with Mr. Miller. I wrote, "Mr. Miller, I need to see you tomorrow morning. Urgent. We are going to speed everything up." "What happened, Mrs. Williams?" "I'm not waiting anymore. I want them out of my house next week." "Understood. Tomorrow, first thing, I'll prepare the documents." I put the phone away. I lay down. And this time I didn't cry, because the tears were gone. In their place was something harder, colder, determination. My son thought I was weak, that I would give up. But he forgot something. He forgot that women who raise children alone, who work 3 jobs, who endure the pain and stay standing. We don't break, we transform. And when they touch what we love the most, we become relentless. Ethan was about to learn something I had taught him when he was a child. Every action has consequences, and his were just about to arrive. On Friday at 8 o'clock in the morning, I was sitting across from Mr. Miller. This time I was not shaking. I was not crying. I was firm as a rock. Mrs. Williams, I prepared everything. He placed several documents on the desk. Here is the eviction notice. Here is the lawsuit for the unpaid loan. $92,000 with interest. And here, he took out another paper. The lawsuit for emotional distress and misuse of property. We estimate $25,000 extra. Emotional distress? I asked. You have suffered psychological abuse in your own home. Systematic humiliations. That has legal value. He looked at me seriously. If we take this to trial, we could win even more. But I warn you, it will be long, painful, and public. How long? 6 months? Maybe a year? I shook my head. I don't have a year. I need them out now. Then we have another option. He leaned back in his chair. We confront them. We show them all the evidence. We make it clear that they either leave amicably or we destroy them legally. With the evidence you have, especially about the illegal money, your son could face jail time. The words jail time hit me in the chest. I don't want him to go to jail. I know, but he doesn't have to know that. The lawyer leaned forward. Fear can be more effective than any trial. If he thinks he can go to prison, he will cooperate. And if he doesn't, then we proceed with everything without mercy. He paused. Ma'am, I know he is your son, but if you don't set boundaries now, they will destroy you. They will sell your house. They will leave you on the street, and they won't look back. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. Let's do it, but I want to be present. I want to see their faces when they find out. Are you sure? Completely. I signed the papers, all of them. The eviction notice, the lawsuit for the loan, everything. The lawyer put them in a manila envelope. When do you want us to notify them? Tomorrow, Saturday morning, when they are home, relaxed, confident. He nodded slowly. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, I will go personally with a process server. Will you be there? I will be there. That night, I arrived home earlier than usual. Catherine was in the living room painting her nails. Ethan was asleep on the couch with his mouth open. Hello? I said. Catherine barely looked at me. Hi. I went up to my room, but not to hide. This time, to plan. I took an old suitcase out of the closet. I started packing my most important things. Documents, photos, clothes, my hospital uniforms, everything I didn't want them to touch. Because tomorrow, after the notification, I didn't know what could happen. I put the suitcase under the bed. Then I did something I never did. I opened my jewelry box, the one my mother gave me before she died. Inside were a few things: a gold ring, my wedding earrings, a thin chain, and a photo. An old faded photo of my husband, James smiling with baby Ethan in his arms. I took it out. I looked at it for a long time. Forgive me, my love, I whispered. I know you wanted me to take care of our son, but I think taking care of him now means letting him go, letting him fall so he can learn. I put the photo away. I closed the jewelry box. And that night, for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. No nightmares, no tears, because there was nothing left to decide. The decision was made. On Saturday, I woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I showered. I put on my best clothes, black pants, a white blouse, closed-toe shoes. I fixed my hair. I put on a little lipstick. I looked in the mirror, and I saw a different woman. She wasn't the exhausted nurse. She wasn't the humiliated mother. She was Susan Williams, owner of this house. Woman who raised a son alone. Woman who saved lives. Woman who was not going to be trampled anymore. I went down to the kitchen. I made coffee. I made scrambled eggs. I warmed up tortillas. Ethan came down with swollen eyes. "What are you doing now?" he asked, surprised. "Making breakfast. Do you want some?" Yeah." I served him. He ate in silence, looking at me out of the corner of his eye. Catherine came down half an hour later. She was wearing a pink silk robe, bare-faced, without makeup. She looked younger, almost vulnerable. "Good morning," I said. "Good morning," she replied suspiciously. "What are we celebrating?" "Nothing. I just thought I'd make a nice breakfast." I served her, too. "Sit down." She sat down but didn't taste the food. "What do you want, Susan?" "Want? Nothing. Can't I make you breakfast?" "You can, but it's weird. You haven't spoken to us for weeks, and now this." I smiled. Maybe I'm just tired of fighting. Robert and Catherine exchanged glances. At 9:30, my phone rang. It was Mr. Miller. "Ma'am, we are arriving." "Perfect. I'll open the door." I hung up. "Who was that?" Ethan asked. "No one important. I'm going to open it. I'm expecting a delivery." I went to the door. I opened it. There they were. Mr. Miller in his gray suit and a younger man with a briefcase, the process server. "Good morning, Mrs. Williams." "Good morning. Come in." They entered. Ethan came out of the kitchen. "Who are you?" he asked. The lawyer spoke in a clear, professional voice. "Good morning. I am Mr. David Miller, litigation attorney. I am here to notify Ethan Williams and Catherine Williams of a legal complaint filed by Mrs. Susan Williams." The silence that followed was absolute. Catherine appeared in the kitchen doorway. "A complaint? What are you talking about?" The process server took the documents out of the briefcase. "Ethan Williams is hereby notified of 1. Immediate eviction from the property located at 847 Park Avenue, Upper East Side, New York. 2. Lawsuit for non-payment of a loan documented before a public notary. Total amount owed, $92,000. 3. Lawsuit for emotional distress and misuse of private property. Estimated amount, $25,000. Ethan turned pale. "Mom, what is this?" "This," I said in a firm voice, "is the end." Catherine snatched the papers from the process server's hands. "This is crazy. You can't sue us. We're your family." "Family!" I repeated the word as if it were poison. "Family that put labels on my own food. Family that planned to sell my house. Family that threw $40 worth of food in the trash." "Mom, wait!" Ethan took a step towards me. "We can talk. You don't have to do this." "There's nothing left to talk about, Ethan. You had months to talk. You had 1,000 opportunities to treat me like your mother, and you chose to treat me like garbage." "It's not true. I love you." The laugh that came out of me sounded bitter. "You loved me so much that you told your wife to convince me to sell my house. You loved me so much that you told me to look for another place to live. You loved me so much that you yelled that you didn't ask to be born." He was silent. The lawyer continued. "You have 72 hours to vacate the property. If you do not do so voluntarily, we will proceed with judicial eviction. Furthermore, Mr. Williams has 30 days to respond to the loan lawsuit. Otherwise, we will proceed with the seizure of assets." "We have nowhere to go," Catherine yelled. "That is not my client's problem," the lawyer replied coldly. "You have family. You have options, but you no longer have the right to be here." "You are an awful woman," Catherine spat at me. "A bitter old woman who can't stand to see her son happy." I looked her straight in the eyes. "No, I am a woman who will no longer allow herself to be trampled in her own house." I turned around and went up the stairs. Behind me, I heard shouting, crying, pleading. I closed my bedroom door, sat on the bed, and breathed. For the first time in months, I truly breathed, because the weight I had carried for so long had finally been lifted. I was no longer their victim. I was their judge. 3 hours after the lawyer left, everything was silent. A thick, dangerous silence. I stayed in my room, listening, waiting. I heard hurried footsteps, doors slamming, Catherine crying, Ethan talking on the phone in a desperate voice, and then nothing. I looked out the window. Ethan's car was still in the driveway. They hadn't left. I went down the stairs carefully. The living room was empty. The kitchen, too. Then I saw something on the refrigerator door, a note written in Ethan's handwriting. Mom, we went to Catherine's parents' house. We'll come back tomorrow to talk. Please reconsider. We are family. Don't do this. I tore up the note, crumpled it, threw it in the trash. Family. How easy it was to use that word when it was convenient. I spent the rest of Saturday cleaning, taking off all the yellow labels one by one. With rage, with satisfaction, every label I tore off was a piece of dignity I recovered. I cleaned out Catherine's refrigerator. I emptied it completely. I threw all her food in the trash. I felt a dark pleasure doing it. Now you know how it feels, I thought. That night I slept with the door locked. Sunday dawned cloudy, gray. I got up early, made coffee, and sat in the kitchen to wait. I knew they would return, and I was right. At 10 o'clock in the morning, I heard the car. Voices. The door opening. They came in. Ethan, Catherine, and her parents, all 4 of them. Mr. George came forward, his face red with anger. "Where is she?" he shouted. "Here I am," I said, coming out of the kitchen. He saw me and advanced towards me with his finger raised. "Who do you think you are to sue my daughter?" "I am the owner of this house, and your daughter is an abuser." "My daughter is not an abuser. You are the one who doesn't know how to live with people." "Mr. George," I said with a calm I didn't know I had, "your daughter put labels on my own food in my own house. She threw my food in the trash. She treated me like garbage. And you? You told me to go to a retirement home so they could keep my house." "Nobody said that," Mrs. Nancy intervened. "Of course you did. Here in this living room 2 weeks ago. We were looking for options for your own good." "For your own good?" I repeated. "Selling my house is for my own good? Putting me in a home and leaving me with crumbs is for my own good?" "That house is worth $500,000, Catherine yelled. "We weren't going to leave you with nothing," Mr. George added. "Ah," I nodded. "You were going to leave me $120,000, as your note says, the one I found where you calculated how much you would keep after selling my house." She fell silent. "What note?" Ethan asked. "The note your wife wrote in an apartment flyer where she planned to steal $380,000 from my own house." "It's not stealing," Catherine murmured. "We were going to give you your share." "My share?" The rage rose in my throat. "My share of my house? Are you listening to yourself?" Mr. George stepped in between us. "Look, Mrs. Williams, I know you are upset, but we can fix this without lawyers, without scenes, like civilized people." "I don't want to fix anything anymore." "Don't be stubborn," he yelled. "If this goes to trial, everyone loses." "Not me. I have all the evidence. Messages, documents, witnesses." I looked at them one by one. "And I have something else. Something I discovered this week." Ethan turned pale. "Mom, no." "Your son," I said, looking at Mr. Schwad, "George, is receiving illegal money, deposits from a shell company, tax fraud. If the IRS finds out, he goes to jail." The silence was absolute. "That's a lie," said Catherine, but her voice trembled. "It's not a lie. I have the bank statements. An accountant has already reviewed them, and if this goes to trial, that information will come to light." Ethan slumped onto the sofa. "Mom, I didn't know. A friend offered me that job. I only signed invoices. I didn't know it was illegal." "But you signed and you received the money and you spent it." My voice was ice. "In hotels, in expensive restaurants, on clothes for your wife, while you told me you didn't have money to pay the electricity bill." "Stop!" Catherine yelled. "Stop playing the victim. You are the one destroying this family." "I didn't destroy anything. You did. Label by label, humiliation by humiliation." "They were just labels. It's not a big deal." "They weren't just labels," I shouted for the first time, and my voice echoed throughout the house. "They were a message that I no longer mattered, that in my own house I was a stranger, that everything I built, everything I worked for, everything I sacrificed was worth nothing." The silence that followed was deafening. You have until Tuesday to leave my house, I said in a firm voice. If you don't, the police will come, the sheriff will come, and they will take you out by force, with all your belongings on the street for the neighbors to see. Mom, please. Ethan knelt in front of me, tears rolling down his cheeks. Please don't do this. I'm your son, your only son. Something broke in my chest seeing him like that, but I didn't back down. Precisely. Because you are my son, Ethan. Because I love you, I have to do this. I crouched down to his level. I spent your whole life saving you. From your illnesses, from your debts, from your mistakes, and the only thing I achieved was making you believe that there would always be someone to clean up your messes. It's not true. Yes, it is, and you know it. I wiped a tear away. You are 32 years old. You don't work. You live on borrowed money. Your wife doesn't work. And you plan to sell my house to continue living without responsibilities. What kind of life is that? The one we could have. No, the one I allowed you to have, but it's over. I stood up. It's time for you to grow up, son. And if that means losing you, I accept it. You're a monster, Catherine yelled. No, I'm a mother who won't allow herself to be used anymore. Mr. George took a step forward. This is not going to end here. We are going to hire a lawyer. We are going to fight. Perfect, I replied. My lawyer is waiting for you, but I warn you, every day you spend here after Tuesday, I will sue you for damages. $300 a day, plus the $92,000 from the loan, plus the $25,000 for emotional distress. Do the math. You have no heart, Mrs. Nancy whispered. I did, but you shattered it. Now I only have dignity, and that you are not going to take from me. I turned around and went up the stairs. Behind me, I heard crying, shouting, curses. I closed my bedroom door. I sat on the bed, and the tears I had held back finally came out. Not of sadness, but of liberation. Because finally, I was free. Monday was the longest day of my life. I went to the hospital early, a 12-hour shift. I needed to be far away. I needed air. My colleagues noticed that something was wrong. Patricia took me to the cafeteria during the break. Susan, you look awful. What happened? I did what you told me. I sued them. I got them out of my house. She hugged me. You did the right thing. Then why do I feel so bad? Because he is your son. And even though he hurt you, he is still your son. She squeezed my hands. But remember, sometimes letting someone fall is the only way for them to learn to get up on their own. I returned home at 8 o'clock in the evening. Ethan's car was gone. I opened the door with a racing heart. The house was silent, but something was different. I went into the living room. Boxes everywhere. Folded clothes, objects wrapped in newspaper. They were packing. I went up the stairs. Ethan's bedroom door was open. Catherine was there, putting clothes in a suitcase. She saw me and stopped. Happy? She said in a dry voice. We're leaving now. Is that what you wanted? I wanted respect. It wasn't too much to ask. Respect? She let out a bitter laugh. You know what? You're right. We're leaving. And you know what else? I'm going to take your son far away from you. Ethan makes his own decisions. Oh, really? She crossed her arms. Don't be so sure, because I value him. I believe in him. Not like you, who only reminds him of everything you did for him, as if it were an eternal debt. Her words hit me. I never made him feel that. Of course you did. Every time you speak. I worked. I paid. I sacrificed. Do you know what that does to a person? It makes him feel like he will never be enough, that he will never be able to pay you back for what you did. I was silent. That's why he drinks. That's why he can't get a job. Because he's so afraid of disappointing the great Susan Williams, the woman who did everything alone, that he prefers not to try. Isn't that right? She continued, her eyes flashing. Yes, it is. And deep down you know it. But it's easier to blame me, to make me the villain, when the truth is that you kept him that way, dependent, useless, because if he grew up, he wouldn't need you anymore. And you need to be needed. I felt the floor moving. Get out of my house, I whispered. Stigadai. She left the room, pushing my shoulder as she passed. I stood there in the hallway, breathing heavily. Was she right? Was all this my fault? I went down the stairs like a zombie. I went into the kitchen. I sat at the table, and then I heard the front door open. It was Ethan. He came in alone, without Catherine. His eyes were red. Mom, I need to talk to you. There is nothing to... Please, his voice cracked. Just listen to me. 5 minutes. I nodded without looking at him. He sat across from me. You are right about everything, he said. About everything. I'm useless, an ingrate, a terrible son. I know. Catherine left me an hour ago. She told me that if I didn't convince you to withdraw the lawsuit, she was leaving. I told her I couldn't ask you that, and she left. He wiped his eyes. Her parents came for her. She told me that when I grew up and was a real man, I should call her, but that as long as I lived off my mom, she didn't want anything to do with me. I felt a bitter satisfaction. I'm sorry, he continued. I'm sorry I was so weak, so cowardly. I'm sorry I yelled that I didn't ask to be born. It was the most horrible thing I've ever said in my life. Tears started to fall down my cheeks. Mom, I did ask to be born, because having you as a mother was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I ruined everything. Ethan, no. Let me finish. He took a deep breath. That money from the invoices. I did know it was wrong. Not at first, but later I did. And I kept doing it because it was easy, because it was quick money, and because Catherine wanted things. And I wanted her to see me as someone successful. Son, I'm going to pay back the money. I don't know how, but I'm going to do it. And I'm going to leave your house. Not because you force me to, but because it's the right thing to do. Because I have to learn to stand on my own 2 feet. He looked me in the eyes. But will you let me stay for a week, just one, to look for a job, to find a room, and then I'll leave? I wanted to tell him no, that it was too late, that the damage was done. But he was my son, and despite everything, he was still my son. 1 week, I said, but under my rules, whatever they are. No alcohol. You look for work every day. You pay me something for the room, even if it's just $150. And you go to therapy. Therapy? Yes, because Catherine was right about one thing. You and I have things to fix, and we can't do it alone. He was silent for a moment. It's okay. I'll do it. And about the loan? I took out my phone, called Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, this is Susan. I want you to freeze the loan lawsuit. Don't withdraw it. Just leave it paused to see what happens. Are you sure? Yes. Understood. And the eviction? I looked at Ethan. Also on pause. 1 week, as I ordered. I hung up. Ethan looked at me with eyes full of tears. Thank you, Mom. Show me. He nodded. He got up to leave, but he stopped at the door. Mom, why? Why? After everything I did to you, do you keep giving me chances? I looked at him, and for the first time in days, I felt something warm in my chest. Because that is what mothers do, son. Not because it is easy, not because it is fair, but because love, true love, doesn't give up. But it also doesn't allow itself to be trampled. And that is the difference you have to learn. He stayed there in the doorframe, and for the first time in years, I saw something in his eyes that I had lost. I saw the child I knew, the boy who hugged me when he was scared, the boy who promised to take care of me when he grew up. That boy was still there, buried under layers of mistakes and lies. But he was there, and for the first time, I had hope. Not that everything would be fixed overnight, but that maybe not everything was lost. The next 3 days were strange. Ethan kept his word. He got up early. He printed resumes. He went out to look for work. I watched him from a distance, and slowly, very slowly, we started talking. Not about the labels, not about Catherine, not about the past. We just talked like we hadn't done in years. On Thursday, he came home with news. "Mom, I have a job interview tomorrow at a hardware store. It's not much, but it's a start." I felt pride, genuine pride. "That's wonderful, son." That night we cooked together. I made rice. He prepared the chicken, like when he was a teenager and helped me in the kitchen. And while we ate, he told me something that both hurt and gave me hope. "Mom, I've been looking at rooms downtown. There's one that's not too bad. Small but clean. It's $750 a month, and if I get this job, I could afford it." "When would you move?" My voice was steady, despite the twist in my heart. "Next week, if I get the job. If I don't..." He hesitated. "I'll keep looking for work and a place. I won't stay here longer than we agreed." I looked at him. "Do you want to leave?" "I think I need to," he said quietly. "If I stay, I'm afraid I'll fall into the same patterns. I need to learn to live alone, to pay for my things, to be responsible." He looked up at me. "But I'm also scared, Mom. Really scared." It was the first time in years he had admitted fear to me. It was the first time in years he had been vulnerable with me. "Being scared is normal," I said. "Growing up is scary. But you can do it." "Can I come visit you? When I'm settled, I mean." "This is still your home, Ethan. But now on different terms." He smiled, a sad but real smile. "Thank you, Mom." And in that moment, I knew I had done the right thing, that letting him fall had been the only way for him to learn to fly. Friday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine. I woke up early, as always, but this time I wasn't alone in the kitchen. Ethan was already there, dressed in the only suit he owned, the navy blue one we'd bought 3 years ago for his cousin's wedding. He was nervously adjusting his tie. "Let me help you with that," I said, approaching him. His hands dropped to his sides as I fixed the knot. The moment felt strangely intimate, like when he was a teenager and I helped him get ready for his first school dance. "Do I look okay?" he asked, his voice uncertain. I stepped back to look at him. The suit was a bit tight around the shoulders now. His hair was neatly combed, his face freshly shaved. He looked like the son I remembered, before Catherine, before the labels, before everything went wrong. "You look perfect," I said. He took a deep breath. "I'm nervous, Mom. I haven't had a job interview in 3 years. Just be honest. Tell them you've been helping with a family business that didn't work out. Tell them you're ready for a fresh start. But what if they ask for references? Then you give them my name. I'll tell them what a hard worker you are." He looked at me, surprised. "You'd do that? After everything?" "Ethan, I never stopped believing in you. I just stopped accepting how you were treating me." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I won't let you down. Not this time." "I know." He gathered his papers, resume ID Social Security card, and put them in a folder. "Wish me luck," he said at the door. "You don't need luck. You need determination." He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, and then he was gone. I spent the day at the hospital, my mind constantly wandering to Ethan. How was the interview going? Would they give him a chance? What would we do if they didn't? When I returned home that evening, the house was quiet. I found Ethan sitting on the back porch, staring at the small garden I'd neglected since all this began. "How did it go?" I asked, sitting beside him. He turned to me, and I couldn't read his expression. "I got it," he said quietly. "You did?" I felt a surge of joy. "Yeah, it's just a sales associate position. 14 an hour, 30 hours a week to start. Maybe full-time if I do well." He shook his head. "It's nothing like what I thought I'd be doing at my age. It's honest work, Ethan. That's what matters." He nodded slowly. "The manager, Mr. Peterson, he said he was taking a chance on me because of the gap in my employment history. He said I need to prove myself." "And you will?" "I start Monday." He turned to look directly at me. "Mom, I found a room too. It's in Brooklyn near the subway. It's small, just a bedroom with a shared bathroom and kitchen, but it's clean. The landlady seems nice. I felt my heart constrict, but I kept my voice steady. That sounds good. When will you move in? Sunday. I paid the deposit today with the money I had saved. Well, the money Catherine didn't know about. He looked down, ashamed. I was hiding monies from her, too. We all have secrets, Ethan. We sat in silence for a while, watching the shadows grow longer as the sun set behind the neighbor's house. I called a therapist today, he said suddenly. She can see me next Wednesday after work. I turned to him, surprised. You did? I promised you I would. And I need it. I need to understand why I let things get so bad. Why I let Catherine control me like that. He paused. Why I treated you so terribly. I reached out and took his hand. It was warm, solid. The hand of a man, not the little boy I still sometimes saw when I looked at him. We both need to understand, Ethan. I think I enabled a lot of your behavior. Maybe Catherine was right about that part. Don't say that. She wasn't right about anything. No, she was. In some ways. I did remind you too often of all I'd done for you. I did make you feel like you could never measure up. I didn't mean to, but I did. He was quiet for a moment. Maybe we both need therapy. I laughed softly. Maybe we do. We sat there until darkness fell completely, holding hands like we used to do when he was small and afraid of the dark. But now we were both stepping into the unknown, both afraid, both determined to find our way. Sunday arrived all too quickly. Ethan had spent Saturday packing his things, sorting through years of accumulated possessions. He didn't have much to take. Clothes, some books, his laptop. The furniture would stay. It belonged to the house, to me. I helped him fold his clothes, pack his toiletries. We worked mostly in silence, the weight of the moment heavy between us. I found this, he said at one point, holding up a small blue robot toy. Remember when you got it for me? I smiled at the memory. You were 9. You had pneumonia. You couldn't go to Jimmy Watson's birthday party, so I brought you that robot because you said Jimmy was getting one. I love this thing. I named him Bobo. You took him everywhere for a year, even to school. He turned the toy over in his hands, then carefully placed it in his backpack. I'm taking him with me. A reminder. Of what? Of when you always made things better. Of when I wasn't afraid to need you. I felt tears threatening, but I blinked them away. Today wasn't for tears. It was for moving forward. His friend Mike arrived at noon with a small moving truck. It took less than an hour to load Ethan's possessions. When everything was packed, Ethan stood in the doorway of his room, the room that had been his for 20 years, and looked around one last time. It looks big or empty, he said. It will be here if you need it, I replied. Not forever, but for now. He turned to me. No, Mom, I need to do this. I need to make it on my own. We walked down to the truck together. Mike was waiting in the driver's seat, giving us privacy for our goodbye. I'll call you when I'm settled, Ethan said. And I'll be back next Sunday for dinner, if that's okay. I'll make pot roast, he smiled. My favorite. I know. He hugged me then, a real hug, tight and warm and full of things we couldn't say yet. I hugged him back, memorizing the feel of him, my son, my grown son who was finally truly growing up. I love you, Mom, he whispered. I love you too, Ethan. Always have. Always will. He pulled away, wiped his eyes quickly. I'd better go. Mrs. Petrovich is expecting me at 2. Drive safely. I will. I stood on the sidewalk and watched the truck pull away, Ethan waving from the passenger window until they turned the corner and disappeared. The house felt enormous without him. Quiet in a way it had never been, not even when he was at college and came home every weekend with his laundry. This was different. This was permanent. I walked through the rooms, touching furniture, straightening pictures. In the kitchen, I opened the refrigerator, my refrigerator, and looked at the food inside. No labels now. Everything was mine, just as it had been before Catherine, before the nightmare began. But somehow it didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss. I closed the refrigerator and sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had so many meals, so many conversations, so many arguments. And for the first time since all this began, I let myself cry. Not the angry tears of before, not the hurt tears, but tears of release, of letting go, of saying goodbye to the past and stepping into whatever came next. When the tears stopped, I washed my face, straightened my shoulders, and began to clean. Not because the house needed it, but because I needed to do something, to move, to remind myself that life goes on, that I was still here, still standing, still Susan Williams. Nurse, mother, survivor. The first week without Ethan was harder than I expected. I kept listening for his footsteps, kept cooking too much food, kept turning to say something to someone who wasn't there. But I also rediscovered the pleasure of solitude, of reading without interruption, of watching what I wanted on television, of coming home to a house exactly as I'd left it. Ethan called on Wednesday night after his therapy session. "How did it go?" I asked. "Hard," he said. "She asked a lot of questions about Dad, about how I felt when he died, about how I've been handling it all these years." "And how have you?" He was quiet for a moment. "Not well, Mom. Not well at all. I think I've been angry for a long time. At him for leaving. At you for being so strong. At myself for not being enough." "Oh, Ethan." "It's okay. Dr. Ross says it's normal. That grief doesn't always look like we expect. Sometimes it looks like anger. Sometimes like dependency." She sounds wise. "She is. I'm seeing her again next week." He paused. "How are you doing?" "I'm okay. The house is quiet." "Too quiet?" "Different quiet. I'm getting used to it." "And work?" "The same. Busy. We're short-staffed as usual." We talked for a while longer about ordinary things. The weather, his new job, he liked it so far, his room, smaller than he remembered from the viewing. "I should go," he said eventually. "I need to get up early tomorrow. Mr. Peterson wants me to learn the inventory system." "Okay. I'm proud of you, Ethan. I hope you know that." "Thanks, Mom. That means a lot." We said our goodbyes, and I sat holding the phone long after we'd hung up, feeling a strange mix of sadness and hope. Sunday came, and with it, Ethan. He arrived promptly at 4, carrying a small potted plant. "Housewarming gift," he said, handing it to me. "Or I guess re-housewarming. The lady at the flower shop said it's easy to care for." "It's lovely. Thank you." I set it on the windowsill where it would get morning sun. He looked different somehow, more solid, more present. He was wearing new clothes, nothing expensive, just clean jeans and a button-down shirt I hadn't seen before. "You look good," I said. "Thanks. I'm sleeping better, and I haven't had a drink since I left." He said it casually, but I could hear the pride underneath. "That's wonderful." I served the pot roast I'd promised, with roasted potatoes and carrots, the way he'd always liked it. We ate and talked, and it felt almost normal, almost like before, but not quite, because we were different people now, more honest, perhaps, more aware of the fragility of our relationship. "I've been thinking about the loan," he said as we finished dessert, apple pie from the bakery down the street. "Ethan, you don't need to worry about that right now." "No, I do. I owe you that money, and I'm going to pay it back." He pulled an envelope from his pocket and slid it across the table. "This is my first payment. It's not much, just $100, but it's a start." I opened the envelope. 5 $20 bills, crisp and new. "I can't take this. You need it for your new place." "Mom, please. I need to do this. For me as much as for you. I worked out a payment plan." He pulled a folded paper from his other pocket. "See? If I pay $100 a month, I can clear the debt in," he hesitated. "Well, a long time, but I'll increase the payments as I earn more." I looked at the carefully written plan, with dates and amounts extending years into the future. My son, planning ahead, taking responsibility. "Okay," I said, folding the paper and putting it with the money. I'll accept it, and I'll keep track. Thank you. He looked relieved, as if he'd been afraid I'd refuse. No, thank you, for being a man of your word. We cleaned up together, washing dishes side by side like we used to. As he was preparing to leave, he hesitated at the door. Mom, I saw Catherine yesterday. My heart skipped. Oh? She called, wanted to meet for coffee. He looked down at his shoes, then back up at me. She wants to get back together. And what did you tell her? I told her no. I told her I was building a new life, a better life, and she wasn't part of it. He took a deep breath. She got angry, said I'd never find anyone else who would put up with me, said I was nothing without her. That's not true. I know. That's what I told her. I said I was my mother's son, and that meant I was stronger than she knew, that I deserved better than someone who only valued me for what I could give her. Pride, fierce and sudden, rose in my chest. You said that? He nodded. I did, and I meant it. I hugged him then, my brave boy, my son who was finally becoming the man I'd always known he could be. Next Sunday? He asked as he pulled away. I'll be here, with bells on. No bells necessary, just you. I watched him walk to the bus stop, straight-backed and purposeful. When the bus came and took him away, I didn't feel the same emptiness as before. I felt something else. Something like peace. Spring arrived with a burst of green, the small garden in my backyard coming alive with flowers I'd planted weeks ago. The house had a new coat of paint, pale blue with white trim, a project I'd been putting off for years but finally tackled with the help of a handyman from the neighborhood. Ethan had been true to his word. Every month, without fail, he brought his payment for the loan. Now up to $150 as he'd been promoted to assistant manager at the hardware store. Every Sunday he came for dinner, sometimes bringing his laundry, sometimes bringing stories about customers or colleagues, once even bringing a girl named Laura who worked at the bakery near his apartment. I'd started therapy myself, working through my own issues with a kind-eyed woman named Dr. Chen, who helped me see patterns I'd been blind to for decades. My need to be needed, my difficulty letting go, my habit of keeping score, not out of malice, but out of fear that if I didn't remind people of my sacrifices, they would forget. They would take me for granted. They would leave. It was hard work, facing these truths about myself. But it was also liberating, understanding that I had contributed to the dynamic that nearly destroyed my relationship with my son. Today was a special Sunday. My sister Mary was visiting from Chicago, and Patricia was coming for dinner too. Ethan had asked if he could bring Laura again. She's important to me, Mom, he'd said simply. I want her to know my family. Family. The word had a different meaning now. Not an obligation, not a battlefield, but a choice, a commitment, a blessing. I was setting the table when the doorbell rang. It was Ethan, early as usual these days, with Laura beside him. She was a pretty girl with warm eyes and a shy smile, carrying a bouquet of spring flowers. These are for you, Mrs. Williams, she said, handing them to me. Thank you, Laura, and please call me Susan. She smiled more confidently this time. Susan. Ethan looked nervous, shifting from foot to foot. Mom, can I talk to you for a minute, privately? Of course. Laura, make yourself comfortable in the living room. There's iced tea in the fridge if you'd like some. I followed Ethan to the kitchen, where he turned to me with a serious expression. Mom, I have something for you. He handed me an envelope. I opened it and gasped. Inside was a check for $10,000. Ethan, what is this? Where did you get this kind of money? I got a bonus at work, a big one. Mr. Peterson is opening a new store, and he wants me to be the manager. This was my signing bonus. He smiled, proud but humble. I wanted you to have it, for the loan. But this is your money, your future. You're my future too, Mom. You always have been. He took my hands in his. Besides, there's more. Laura and I are moving in together. We found an apartment halfway between her work and mine. It's small, but it's nice. We can afford it together. Oh, Ethan, that's wonderful. There's something else. He hesitated, then plunged ahead. I've been saving for a ring. Not yet, but soon. She's the one, Mom. I know it sounds crazy after only a few months, but she's everything Catherine wasn't. She's kind. She works hard. She respects me, but she doesn't let me get away with anything either. He laughed softly. She reminds me of you, actually. That's the nicest thing you could say about her. The doorbell rang again. Mary and Patricia had arrived together. Go let them in, I said. We'll talk more later. Dinner was a joyous affair. Mary told stories about her grandchildren. Patricia shared hospital gossip. Laura talked about her dreams of opening her own bakery someday. Ethan watched her with such tenderness that it made my heart ache in the best possible way. As we finished dessert, Laura's homemade cheesecake, which was delicious, Ethan cleared his throat. I'd like to make a toast, he said, raising his glass of sparkling cider. To my mother, Susan Williams, the strongest, bravest, most forgiving person I know, who taught me that true love sometimes means letting go, who showed me that it's never too late to start over. His voice caught. Who gave me life twice, once when I was born, and again when she had the courage to say enough. To Susan, the others echoed, raising their glasses. I felt tears welling, but they were tears of joy, of gratitude, of wonder at how life can change when you have the courage to stand up for yourself and the wisdom to know when to extend grace. Later, after everyone had gone home and I was alone in the quiet house, my house, I sat on the back porch looking at the stars. I thought about labels, about how we let others label us, old, difficult, controlling, victim, about how we sometimes label ourselves, martyr, doormat, unlovable, alone. And I thought about how sometimes the bravest thing we can do is peel off those labels, throw them away, and write our own story. A story not defined by what we've endured, but by how we've overcome. Not by who has hurt us, but by who we've become in spite of the hurt. My name is Susan Williams. I am 67 years old. I am a nurse. I am a mother. I am a survivor. And I am finally, gloriously free.